sisters. Welcome to our Hello Sun Live. Hello, all the beloved children. And here in this channel, it's where we will see God as a father, the main structure of being a real prophet, because paternity of God is freedom. And today in this video, we will see about the full explanation of what is as a father. And this is really important for you, okay? Why? Because we are in the last days. But what's the Bible, God, the Father, says about the real prophet from these days? Yeah, this is the full explanation of what is a prophet of God as a father. And I want to start, to talk with you why people today they see a prophet my Instagram, and you can go here in the description and see all my social media. But I was talking there like when I arrived here in the US, because I'm Brazilian, but now I'm living here in the US. And when I arrived here in the US, I was looking like some things that was different. But I'm talking about experience, what I saw in Brazil and what I was looking in Brazil. And you will understand one thing. Brazil today, it's not anymore like a poor country. Years ago, you know, Brazil was really, really, not really, really, but a little poor country. And if you notice, if you notice, like, always when you live in a poor country, you will see like it's more easy to those people who they don't when they don't have nothing. You try to fight, not fight, but they you try to persecute, they you try to have a better life, right? And of course in rich countries too. But think like, for example, when you already have everything, it's a little more complicated to you put keep living, and the things will start to keep happening, right? Because you already have everything. Think like that, like in a rich family, that rich person doesn't need too much to put like, man, I need to work so hard. No, maybe that person, maybe his parents or her parents already have a company, a business company, and he doesn't need like to work too much, let's say like that, because they already have employees and so on, right? But think a little more profound. Think a little more like when you see the vision from a poor country. That person who was born in a poor country, well, maybe that person will need to put more effort, to grow, right? Because that person does comparison, the same explanation when the subject is about prophet, and I'm talking like a normal prophet. When the subject is about a prophet, like the Bible, you will see that those prophets who doesn't have too much ways, they will try to find more God. They will try, with all that they have, you try to stay more close of God. They will try to hear God's voice more. But of course, for example, if it's someone who already is living, in a good environment, in a system that give everything to him, he will have more difficulty, believe me, to put in practice his or her relationship with God when the subject is about trying to hear God's voice and so on. And do you know why? It's just because of that, because the environment it's not helping too much to that prophet to develop more. And this is the same about why, for example, I have difficulty when I arrived here in the West. How it's it's the first country right in this planet when the subject it's about politic stuff. and and about rich country and so on. And when I arrived in the US, I went in some churches, and for me it was difficult to see, like a prophet. But in Brazil, for example, almost each Pentecostal church and some Baptist, like Protestant church in general, but more in Pentecostal, to one. Not like in 100, uh, not like in 100% of the church there, of course, but I'm talking general. And when I'm talking about a prophet, it's because people, they see the prophet of God, and this is wrong. But let me explain what is a prophet first, right? A normal prophet. A real normal prophet, it's that person who at least will reveal something from that other person, or from that country, from that nation, about that no one knew, and then it will happen in the future. It can be about the past, about the current time, and about the future. That real prophet can reveal something about that person from her past or his past, or something about the current time. Or, for example, if we are talking about a nation stuff, a revelation for a nation, maybe can happen, maybe it's a revelation about something that will happen in the future, or about that person too. Period. A normal prophet at least need to, for example, to review. And when I'm talking, it's about the work of the prophet, right? Because of, you will see it's so more profound. But a prophet, before to have revelation about himself, about God himself, and just after that about other people. But this is another subject. And then a normal prophet is that it's a person that will reveal something that only God and that person did. But the problem is, today, why I put like what is a prophet of God as a father? It's because of that. Because when people, they look, and when people, they think about a prophet, they are only thinking about the title. And this is the mistake. This is not right. Because when you think about a prophet only as a title, you will have really difficult to yourself to start to hear God's voice, to start actually to not hear God's voice, but to have a real relationship with Him as a son, or as a daughter. Because that is the problem. People today, they want like a prophetic ministry training just to have the title, not to develop a real relationship with God. And believe me, I was there. One of the first times that God talked to me, when I heard His voice, He said a different and strong phrase for me, and was difficult to hear. But deeply inside me, it was the truth, because He said, well, but in these days, in their ministry, because the gifts, and in this case, the prophetic gift. But the real goal, the origin plan, was to be like Adam and Eve, to have a relationship with God directly, more than face to face, including like Moses in the Bible. And unfortunately, people, they do that. When they see a prophet, it's like they are here and they try to see like, whoa, he's a prophet. He's like a lot more, like above of me. And no, that is not the goal. And I remember, you know, in 2006, in September 27 of 2006, Wednesday, almost 9:30 p.m., when God used the prophet in my life for the first time. And that experience was like, wow, because only me and God knew about what that prophet said. You know, in that moment, my grandfather he died, and my mom she traveled to another state in Brazil, in the north, to rest a little because in my home was just living me, my mom, and my grandfather. I don't know if you know that, but my mom and my dad they just had me as a child, and my father, finished the marriage when I had 4 years old. And since then, he was living in one state, and my mom was living in Brasilia with me and my grandfather, the capital of Brazil. And in that moment, my mom traveled to rest a little to another state, and I was going back from work, and I decided to go, to my friend, and he cut hair, and he was, totally different when he was using his clothes and all that. And he said to me, "Let's go, in a church here. It's Assembly of God," and I was invited to preach. I am the guest there as a preacher today, and I looked to him, but you are a musician like me. And he said, "Yeah, but I received that invitation." And then I decided to go, you know, more because, I was sad in that moment because my grandfather died. And, you know, I was tired too, because after my grandfather died, and, I needed to work more because I was the man of the house, right? And, because work, because college. But in that moment, I decided to go to my friend, because I didn't want to go directly to home, the empty home, because no one was there, right? But I decided to go with him, in that church to see, to see him preaching, not because I wanted to receive or see something else. No, I just wanted to see him preaching. But God had a new plan for me that day. And I went there with him, and it was a small church, maybe with 20 people in that day. And the worship music started and was different for me. And then, he started to preach. And the first thing that I saw that I never saw in my life, when he was preaching, he started to change all his topics because he did the topics, about what he wanted to preach. And he changed everything and he started to share his testimony of life. And in a point, he looked to an old woman that was in a wheelchair, and he put his hand, and the woman had a problem in her leg, and she was healed. And then for me was, what? No, I know him. He didn't pay that woman, to act like that. And then I started to freak out a little. But then I was in the last chair in the church. And for me, that was something big. But after he finished, he took the microphone and he started to preach. Sorry, after he finished, the pastor from that church, he took the microphone and he started to pray for some people. And some people started to cry, and I was not understanding that. But he looked to me in the end and he said, "Young man, come here because God wants to talk with you." And then I looked behind. Yeah, it's you. And then, I was shy. And then I put my hand in the back and I was, walking like that, shy. And he looked to me, you know, and he said, "My young man." And in that moment, I don't know, but, as I said to you, I was a musician too, like him. And I was doing a project in that moment that no one knew, just me. I was doing my notebook, a project, and it was in my home, no one knew about that. And that project, it was about a gospel band called Memuji. In that moment, it's about, it means worship. I forgot the country now. But no one knew about that gospel band. And in that day, when that pastor, he called me because he said God wanted to talk with me, I thought he was calling me to pray or something. But when I was walking and I stood in front of him, he looked to me and he did a smile and he said, "My young man, God is talking to me that you are creating a band and God will bring you between the nations and a lot of people will accept Jesus as the Lord." And in that moment, I started to cry like a baby, cry like a baby because no one knew about that. No one knew about that plan. And in that moment happened, and I saw like, whoa, God really exists. And from there, many things started to change. In that day, I had a different prophet, like what we want to talk with you in the part two. But a prophet that he was not only in the Old Testament, but he in the New Testament, in the current time. And God used him to talk something that only God and me knew. And in that specific day, I also was baptized with the Holy Spirit because that person put his hand on my head and I fell on the floor because I didn't have ways to stay standing. And then I fell on the floor and I started to speak in tongues. That was a powerful day. And that was a day that I met God as the Lord, like, wow, he really exists. And also, for the first time in my life, I saw a real prophet because God used him to talk something that only God and me knew. But in the part two, I want to talk with you something different, okay? And we will talk soon, tomorrow. Because now, tomorrow, you will see a different prophet, a prophet for the last days, a prophet from God as a father. You will be that prophet. God bless you. Bye bye.